So I did watch the unveiling live, and I wanted to let some time go by for my opinions and thoughts to digest. But overall, yes, I was somewhat impressed with the ID Buzz. I mean, they frankly didn't give us too much to get excited for, but some people were underwhelmed by the design. I found it kind of a perfect mesh between the old classic ID Buzz design and this electrification future, which of all the legacy automakers adopting with the times, I actually think VW seems to be doing the best job, despite the emission scandal and all that. The fact that they're kind of spearheading the charger network with the Electrify America stations, and I thought the ID4 was a decent value, and especially with the prices of Teslas going way up, I'm very much thinking a lot more people might be looking towards the ID4 at this point. Seeing that they want to bring over a lot of those design characteristics to the ID Buzz gets me excited, and also just VW addressing a very in-demand market at this point, which in my view is electric vans of any kind. There's really not that many options to choose from. I mean, you have the Fiat E-Van and you have the Ford E-Transit, none of which are trying to be particularly interesting to everyday consumers. They're mostly just looked at as business-to-business relationships, and the range numbers are not that great, whereas most people are speculating the ID Buzz is going to get somewhere between like 230 or 250 miles of range, which is not terrible if you consider most vans are not aerodynamically designed, but I know a ton of people that are moving towards that more nomadic lifestyle, and they want to just kind of live out of the van, or at least take a lot of things with them on road trips. But of course they want to go electric, they want to rely off of charging stations and not produce emissions, and of course there's all kinds of camping features that can be unlocked already with Tesla's camp mode, basically having an HVAC system that works whether or not the car is actually running, because with an EV it's kind of always running in the first place. So I'm happy to see that there's some development going on in this field. Of course, Tesla is very much distracted with just ramping all of their current vehicles, and that is helping them accelerate the transition to sustainable energy, just working on getting the backlogs down, which certainly makes a lot of us feel deprived of new models and new configurations. So finally seeing some attention driven towards like a consumer-based van. This is something that has practical doors, because the back doors don't swing open like a traditional crossover. They slide backward like a traditional minivan. But minivans kind of get a bad rep in my opinion. You know, they always have this kind of soccer mom and less sporty look to them, so people just kind of write them off as, I don't want to be the minivan guy, I want an SUV because that's more sporty. But honestly, even though the ID Buzz only has one motor, electric vehicles of any size and class can be insanely fast and have a lot of acceleration and still be pretty dang sporty, and I'm definitely getting kind of tired of so many different automakers coming up with their own iteration of an electric crossover. Here's another crossover, here's another crossover. It's a popular segment, and that's what most people are buying, so I get it, but it's refreshing to see VW kind of lean in the direction of, hold on, let's just try to make a consumer-grade electric van. But of course, they're also making a cargo version, which they're claiming takes out the second row of seats and basically allows for a 138 cubic feet of storage space. That is an insane amount of storage, and that might come at the cost of range, because the cargo version is supposed to be a little bit longer, and I'm sure none of the ID Buzzes are very aerodynamic, but I could see that being a very popular option for van life people out there, which I'll mention I'm kind of like mildly interested in doing that type of thing. My wife and I have often talked about like one day doing some kind of, you know, cross-country road trip and kind of just living out of the van and seeing all kinds of different places and staying in lots of different places across the country. But of course the big hurdle is I don't want to do it with a gas vehicle, because I don't like dealing with the brake pad replacements or the oil changes or stinky gas stations all the time. I would love to do it in an electric option, and there's just not very many good options out there right now. At least the Ford E-Transits have like barely over 100 miles of range, and the Fiat vans aren't as available in the United States. And the VW ID Buzz is rumored to not come to the US until 2024, so it's not necessarily something around the corner, but something I'll keep on my radar, because I'm not too interested in the consumer grade version, because that one, when you fold down the seats, only has 78 cubic feet of volumetric space, which is honestly not that much better than a Model Y long range. And of course in 2024 there will likely be more electric pickup truck options out there. Hopefully the R1T and R1S have ramped up a bunch, and of course the Cybertruck will be on the market. But if VW is hoping for the ID Buzz to be priced around $45,000-$50,000, at least that's what most rumors are suggesting right now, I could see this being a pretty popular option. And by the way, far more iconic than the ID4, which kind of just looks like generic basic SUV. But I did kind of enjoy the interior layout layout of the ID4 a lot more than the Mustang Mach-E when I test drove it. I prefer having a landscape display, and I like their emphasis on having kind of the white steering wheel and white accents. They definitely need to improve the software a bit, but VW has said that they're trying to improve the responsiveness on the ID Buzz, and of course still have autonomous driving features, still have over-the-air software updates, which is good. So hopefully the OS, which is my biggest problem with the ID4, could be more addressed by the time the ID Buzz comes out. But I think having something that's iconic and recognizable, that's offering some kind of unique set of features that you don't see on most of the electric crossovers that are flooding the market right now, that does get me interested. And I know that the ID Buzz isn't quite as cool looking or maybe as practical as people were hoping based on the prototype renders and the original ID Buzz probably being a lot more spacious on the inside, but I'll go ahead and put on the record that I think this is a nice design, and I'd be far more interested in buying an ID Buzz than any other VW electric vehicle, at least in the US. Just have something that's a bit different, and I know it has kind of a stigma to it that some people would rather have a sporty crossover or a sporty hatchback, but I think the utility of having that much volumetric space in the back of the van while simultaneously not having to worry about the rear passenger doors unfolding and hitting cars next to you, this is how you kind of balance that futuristic but practical design, and hopefully not in a price point that's too outrageous, and with still a decent amount of range. And because it's made by VW, hopefully they'll still offer, 3 years of Electrify America charging, in which case this might be just an amazing epic road trip / camping vehicle. And yes, of course, I'd be far more interested if Tesla made a van that could supercharge, but that doesn't sound like it's going to be happening anytime soon. But at the same time, I will say, if I couldn't buy a Tesla, or the Model 3 became too expensive, or they stopped making it, or something like that happened, the ID4 is second on the list for EVs I would consider buying, by the way. It's secondary to Tesla brands. I thought it was a very practical design with a very smooth ride, very tight turning radius, which I'm excited for that kind of tight turning radius on the ID Buzz as well. I don't care if it's slow. I don't need a fast accelerating vehicle. I really don't even need all-wheel drive. But the ID4s are currently getting like 270 miles of range, and they start at $41,000, which is $6,000 less than the cheapest Model 3. That's a pretty dang good value. So I would highly encourage people, check out the ID4 if Teslas are getting too expensive for you, but you still want to go electric. And as far as vans go, the ID Buzz looks like the most tempting one on my list if we did ever do that kind of van lifestyle in the future. So we'll see what happens. We'll see how the range numbers are with a 77 kilowatt hour battery pack. And I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts as well. If you're interested in the ID Buzz, are there different types of electric vans out there you would like to see, or changes you would like them to make? Feel free to let me know in the comments down below. Thank you to everyone supporting the channel over on Patreon. It's helping a ton, and just watching these videos seriously makes a difference. Take care. Have a great day.